Principle 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Criticism is futile because it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes him strive to justify himself. Criticism is dangerous because it wounds a person's precious pride, hurts his sense of importance, and arouses resentment. Let's realize that the person we're going to correct and condemn will probably justify himself or herself and condemn us in return. B.F. Skinner, the world-famous psychologist, proved through his experiments that an animal rewarded for good behavior will learn much more rapidly and retain what it learns far more effectively than an animal punished for bad behavior. Later studies have shown that the same applies to humans. By criticizing, we do not make lasting changes and often incur resentment. Hans Selye, another great psychologist, said, "As much as we thirst for approval, we dread condemnation." The resentment that criticism engenders can demoralize employees, family members, and friends, and still not correct the situation that has been condemned. When dealing with people, let us remember we are not dealing with creatures of logic. We are dealing with creatures of emotion, creatures bristling with prejudices and motivated by pride and vanity. Any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do. But it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. "A great man shows his greatness," said Carlyle, "by the way he treats little men." Instead of condemning people, let's try to understand them. Let's try to figure out why they do what they do. That's a lot more profitable and intriguing than criticism, and it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. As Dr. Johnson said, "God himself, sir, does not propose to judge man until the end of his days." Why should you and I? Principle 2. Give honest, sincere appreciation. There is only one way under high heaven to get anybody to do anything: by making the other person want to do it. Remember, there is no other way. The deepest urge in human nature is the desire to be important. Remember that phrase, the desire to be important. It is significant. William James said, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated." He didn't speak, mind you, of the wish or the desire or the longing to be appreciated. He said the craving to be appreciated. Here is a gnawing and unfaltering human hunger, and the rare individual who honestly satisfies this heart hunger will hold people in the palm of his or her hand, and the way to develop the best that is in a person is by appreciation and encouragement. Sincere appreciation was one of the secrets of the first John D. Rockefeller's success in handling men. For example, when one of his partners, Edward T. Bedford, lost $1 million for the firm by a bad buy in South America, John D. might have criticized, but he knew Bedford had done his best and the incident was closed. So Rockefeller found something to praise. He congratulated Bedford because he'd been able to save 60% of the money he'd invested. "That's splendid," said Rockefeller. "We don't always do as well as that upstairs." In our interpersonal relations, we should never forget that all our associates are human beings and hunger for appreciation. It is the legal tender that all souls enjoy. Try leaving a friendly trail of little sparks of gratitude on your daily trips. You will be surprised how they will set small flames of friendship that will be rose beacons on your next visit. Emerson said, "Every man I meet is my superior in some way. In that, I learn of him." Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise, and people will cherish your words and treasure them and repeat them over a lifetime. Repeat them years after you have forgotten them. Principle 3. Arouse in the other person an eager want. Why talk about what we want? That's childish, absurd. Of course you're interested in what you want. You are eternally interested in it, but no one else is. The rest of us are just like you. We are interested in what we want. So the only way on earth to influence other people is to talk about what they want and show them how to get it. Remember that tomorrow when you're trying to get somebody to do something. If there is any one secret of success, said Henry Ford, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as from your own. That is so simple, so obvious, that anyone ought to see the truth of it at a glance. Yet 90% of the people on this earth ignore it 90% of the time. The world is full of people who are grabbing and self-seeking. So the rare individual who unselfishly tries to serve others has an enormous advantage. He has little competition. People who can put themselves in the place of other people, who can understand the workings of their minds, need never worry about what the future has in store for them. And the best piece of advice which can be given to would-be persuaders, whether in business, in the home, in the school, in politics, is first arouse in the other person an eager want. He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. Tomorrow you may want to persuade somebody to do something. Before you speak, pause and ask yourself, how can I make this person want to do it? When we have a brilliant idea, instead of making others think it is ours, why not let them cook and stir the idea themselves? They will then regard it as their own. They will like it and maybe eat a couple of helpings of it. Remember, first arouse in the other person an eager want. He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. People are not interested in you. They are not interested in me. They are interested in themselves, morning, noon, and after dinner. If we merely try to impress people and get people interested in us, we will never have many true, sincere friends. Friends, real friends, are not made that way. I have discovered from personal experience that one can win the attention and time and cooperation of even the most sought-after people by becoming genuinely interested in them. Showing a genuine interest in others not only wins friends for you, but may develop in its customers a loyalty to your company. It is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides the greatest injury to others. It is from among such individuals that all human failures spring. If you want others to like you, if you want to develop real friendships, if you want to help others at the same time as you help yourself, keep this principle in mind. Everybody in the world is seeking happiness, and there's only one sure way to find it. That is, by controlling your thoughts. Happiness doesn't depend on outward conditions, it depends on inner conditions. It isn't what you have, or who you are, or where you are, or what you're doing that makes you happy or unhappy. It is what you think about it. There is nothing either good or bad, said Shakespeare, but thinking makes it so. Whenever you go out of doors, draw the chin in, carry the crown of the head high, and fill the lungs to the utmost. Drink in the sunshine, greet your friends with a smile, and put soul into every handclasp. Do not fear being misunderstood, and do not waste a minute thinking about your enemies. Try to fix firmly in your mind what you would like to do, and then, without veering off direction, you will move straight to the goal. Keep your mind on the great and splendid things you would like to do, and then, as the days go gliding away, you will find yourself unconsciously seizing upon the opportunities that are required for the fulfillment of your desire. Picture in your mind the able, earnest, useful person you desire to be, and the thought you hold is hourly transforming you into that particular individual. Thought is supreme. Preserve a right mental attitude, the attitude of courage, frankness, and good cheer. To think rightly is to create. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. The average person is more interested in his or her own name than in all the other names on earth put together. Remember that name and call it easily, and you have paid a subtle and very effective compliment. But forget it or misspell it, and you've placed yourself at a sharp disadvantage. Most people don't remember names for the simple reason that they don't take the time and energy necessary to concentrate and repeat and fix names indelibly in their minds. They make excuses for themselves. They're too busy. We should be aware of the magic contained in a name and realize this single item is wholly and completely owned by the person with whom we are dealing, and nobody else. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Exclusive attention to the person who is speaking to you is very important. Nothing else is so flattering as that. Isaac F. Marcuson, a journalist who interviewed hundreds of celebrities, declared that many people fail to make a favorable impression because they don't listen attentively. They have been so much concerned with what they are going to say next, they do not keep their ears open. Very important people have told me they prefer good listeners to good talkers, but the ability to listen seems rarer than almost any other good trait. Even the most violent critic will frequently soften and be subdued in the presence of a patient, sympathetic listener. One of the great listeners of modern times was Sigmund Freud. A man who met Freud described his manner of listening. It struck me so forcibly that I shall never forget him. He had qualities which I had never seen in any other man. Never had I seen such concentrated attention. There was none of that piercing, soul-penetrating gaze business. His eyes were mild and genial. His voice was low and kind. His gestures were few, but the attention he gave me, his appreciation of what I said, even when I said it badly, was extraordinary. You have no idea what it meant to be listened to like that. So, if you aspire to be a good conversationalist, be an attentive listener. To be interesting, be interested. Ask questions that other persons will enjoy answering. Encourage them to talk about themselves and their accomplishments. Remember that the people you're talking to are 100 times more interested in themselves and their wants and problems than they are in you and your problems. Make the other person feel important, and do it sincerely. Philosophers have been speculating on the rules of human relationships for thousands of years, and out of all that speculation, there has evolved only one important precept. Zoroaster taught it to his followers in Persia 2,500 years ago. Confucius preached it in China 24 centuries ago. Lao Tse, the founder of Taoism, taught it to his disciples in the valley of the Han. Buddha preached it on the bank of the holy Ganges 500 years before Christ. The sacred books of Hinduism taught it 1,000 years before that. Jesus taught it among the stony hills of Judea 19 centuries ago. Jesus summed it up in one thought, probably the most important rule in the world. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. You want the approval of those with whom you come in contact. You want recognition of your true worth. You want a feeling that you are important in your little world. You don't want to listen to cheap, insincere flattery, but you do crave sincere appreciation. You want your friends and associates to be, as Charles Schwab put it, hearty in their approbation and lavish in their praise. All of us want that. So let's obey the golden rule and give unto others what we would have others give unto us. The life of many a person could probably be changed if only someone would make him feel important. Over 300 years ago, Galileo said, "You cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him to find it within himself." There's only one way under high heaven to get the best of an argument, and that is to avoid it. Avoid it as you would avoid rattlesnakes and earthquakes. You can't win an argument. You can't, because if you lose it, you lose it, and if you win it, you lose it. Why? Well, suppose you triumph over the other man and shoot his argument full of holes and prove that he is non compos mentis. And then what? You will feel fine, but what about him? You've made him feel inferior. You've hurt his pride. he will resent your triumph, and a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. As wise old Ben Franklin used to say, if you argue and rankle and contradict, you may achieve a victory sometimes, but it will be an empty victory because you will never get your opponent's goodwill. So figure it out for yourself. Which would you rather have, an academic, theatrical victory or a person's goodwill? You can seldom have both. Some suggestions are made on how to keep a disagreement from becoming an argument. Welcome the disagreement. If there's some point you haven't thought about, be thankful if it is brought to your attention. Perhaps this disagreement is your opportunity to be corrected before you make a serious mistake. Our first natural reaction in a disagreeable situation is to be defensive. Be careful, keep calm, and watch out for your first reaction. Control your temper. Remember, you can measure the size of a person by what makes him or her angry. Look for areas where you can admit error and say so. Apologize for your mistakes. It will help disarm your opponents and reduce defensiveness. Promise to think over your opponent's ideas and study them carefully, and mean it. Your opponents may be right. Suggest that a new meeting be held later that day or the next day when all the facts may be brought to bear. In preparation for this meeting, ask yourself some hard questions. Could my opponents be right? Partly right? Is there truth or merit in their position or argument? Is this difficult situation an opportunity for me? When we're right, let's try to win people gently and tactfully to our way of thinking. And when we're wrong, and that will be surprisingly often if we're honest with ourselves, let's admit our mistakes quickly and with enthusiasm. Not only will that technique produce astonishing results, but believe it or not, it is a lot more fun under the circumstances than trying to defend oneself. Remember the old proverb, by fighting you never get enough, but by yielding you get more than you expected. If your temper is aroused and you tell them a thing or two, you'll have a fine time unloading your feelings. But what about the other person? Will he share your pleasure? Will your belligerent tones, your hostile attitude, make it easy for him to agree with you? If a man's heart is rankling with discord and ill feeling toward you, you can't win him to your way of thinking with all the logic in Christendom. Scolding parents and domineering bosses and husbands and nagging wives ought to realize that people don't want to change their minds. They can't be forced or driven to agree with you or me, but they may possibly be led to, if we are gentle and friendly, ever so gentle and ever so friendly. Remember what Lincoln said, "A drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall." In talking with people, don't begin by discussing the things on which you differ. Begin by emphasizing and keep on emphasizing the things on which you agree. Get the other person saying yes, yes at the outset. Keep your opponent, if possible, from saying no. The skillful speaker gets at the outset a number of yes responses. This sets the psychological process of the listeners moving in the affirmative direction. It is a very simple technique, this yes response, and yet how much it is neglected. Socrates was one of the greatest philosophers the world has ever known. He did something that only a handful of men in all history have been able to do. He sharply changed the whole course of human thought. And now, 24 centuries after his death, he is honored as one of the wisest persuaders who ever influenced this wrangling world. Did he tell people they were wrong? Oh no, not Socrates. His whole technique, now called the Socratic method, was based upon getting a yes, yes response. He asked questions with which his opponent would have to agree. He kept on asking questions until finally, without realizing it, his opponents found themselves embracing a conclusion they would have bitterly denied a few minutes previously. The next time we're tempted to tell someone he or she is wrong, Let's remember old Socrates and ask a gentle question, a question that will get the yes, yes response. The Chinese have a proverb, "He who treads softly goes far." How to criticize and not be hated for it. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. It's always easier to listen to unpleasant things after we have heard some praise of our good points. Talk about your own mistakes first. It isn't nearly so difficult to listen to a recital of your faults if the person criticizing begins by humbly admitting that he too is far from impeccable. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. People are more likely to accept an order if they have had a part in the decision that caused the order to be issued. Wouldn't you like to have a magic phrase that would stop arguments, eliminate ill feeling, create goodwill, and make the other person listen attentively? All right, here it is. I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I were you, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do. An answer like that will soften the most cantankerous old cuss alive. And you can say that and be 100% sincere, because if you were the other person, you, of course, would feel just as he does. 3/4 of the people you will ever meet are hungering and thirsting for sympathy. Give it to them, and they will love you. Most people trying to win others to their way of thinking do too much talking themselves. Let the other people talk themselves out. They know more about their business and problems than you do, so ask them questions. Let them tell you a few things. If you disagree with them, you may be tempted to interrupt, but don't. It's dangerous. They won't pay attention to you while they still have a lot of ideas of their own, crying for expression, so listen patiently and with an open mind. Be sincere about it. Encourage them to express their ideas fully. No one likes to feel he or she is being sold something or told to do a thing. We much prefer to feel that we're buying of our own accord or acting on our own ideas. We like to be consulted about our wishes, our wants, our thoughts. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. Remember that other people may be totally wrong, but they don't think so. Don't condemn them. Any fool can do that. Try to understand them. Only wise, tolerant, exceptional people even try to do that. There's a reason why the other man thinks and acts as he does. Try honestly to put yourself in his place. Then, along with Lincoln and Roosevelt, you will have grasped the only solid foundation for interpersonal relationships. Namely, that success in dealing with people depends on a sympathetic grasp of the other person's viewpoint.